When you scan a map for signs of conflict, you're looking at the wrong territory. Modern war frontlines do not follow geographic borders. Conventional analysis fails because it consumes the narrative instead of reading the board. It attempts to measure the world with 20th century logic, ignoring the reality that kinetic weapons are being replaced by cognitive triggers. Humanity has moved past the observation of traditional kinetic warfare into active entrenchment with fifth-generation warfare, or 5GW. In 5GW, operational objectives shift away from the physical acquisition of land, gold, or energy. These traditional goals are secondary to the primary target. Modern state actors aim to paralyze the individual's impulse for self-defense. They seek to neutralize the psychological will of a population long before a single shot is fired. We are currently inside a global conflict where the weapons are entirely invisible to those looking for conventional indicators. The war is happening at the level of perception. The historical evolution of war shows that empires eventually discovered a hard truth. A destroyed military does not mean a conquered people. The Vietnam War is the foundational lesson. A superior military force failed not on the battlefield, but through the collapse of public endurance. During the Iraq War, strategists evolved this concept using engineered media narratives. The goal was to manufacture consent and project absolute dominance to all audiences. Afghanistan demonstrated how prolonged occupation tests the psychological endurance of every participant. It proved physical presence is ineffective if the occupying force loses its purpose. Today, the state weaponizes these lessons domestically through systemic information warfare. They have turned the tools of psychological operations inward. Digital media algorithms and state propaganda work in unison to induce a state of constant, low-level anxiety. This keeps the populace in a reactive, survivalist mode. Subduing an opponent without fighting represents the supreme art of war. Physical borders become irrelevant when the mind is already occupied by the state's narrative. We can apply these principles of psychological warfare to a live geopolitical crisis, such as the US-Israel-Iran escalation, to see the hidden mechanics at work. The flashpoint for this conflict centers on the Temple Mount. These 35 acres serve as the most strategically sensitive theater on the planet, where a single event can be leveraged to shift global sentiment. There is a direct economic trigger to this theater. When oil holds at $80 a barrel, it functions as a mechanism for global control, straining the resources of independent citizens while funding state actors. A game theory matrix reveals player incentives, plotting state actors against the citizen. Mathematically, a prolonged stalemate is the state's dominant strategy. Victory ends control, whereas permanent crisis provides steady payoffs. This engineered stalemate expands state power, justifying increased surveillance and funding the military-industrial complex. Within this system, the calculated decline of the petrodollar serves as a tool for wealth extraction. It targets the dependent class, bleeding their economic sovereignty, while they are distracted by the geopolitical theater. Global conflict is a system meant to be sustained for maximum leverage. It is not a war meant to be won, but a process meant to be continued. Geopolitical theater serves as a delivery system for a specific payload, the systemic engineering of anxious helplessness. Weaponized fear functions as a biological override. It blinds strategic foresight and neutralizes the capacity for critical thinking, leaving the individual in a state of perpetual reaction. The delivery method is the relentless media cycle. Continuous crises ensure that the populace never has the psychological breathing room to question the underlying structure of the game. This creates a manufactured dependency. When people are afraid, they abandon self-reliance and look toward failing institutions to provide them with a sense of safety. Modern society is built on these rituals of surrender. Populations repeatedly vote to exchange their natural liberty for the mere promise of security. This manipulation mirrors the tactics of emotional hijacking. It utilizes shame and desperation to drive impulsive decisions, ensuring the citizen remains submissive. In the institutional game of perpetual war, the citizen is the primary target. Under these rules, the citizen is the only player guaranteed to lose. If the war is being fought for your mind, the only effective counter-strategy is the establishment of an unshakable internal perimeter. This is the path of the warrior philosopher. Defense begins with cognitive security. Because 5GW targets your perception, you must sever all psychological dependence on state-provided narratives to regain your footing. This framework maps your defense, synthesizing strategic warfare with self-cultivation. Natural law provides an objective baseline, a moral firewall grounding you in universal justice. Finally, your true will creates an internal signal that information warfare cannot jam, serving as the antidote to manufactured dependency. This commitment to self-rule has historical roots in the principle of voluntarism. Henry David Thoreau demonstrated that radical self-reliance and non-compliance are the only rational responses to a corrupt state machinery. Rational egoism further reinforces this sovereign stand. It posits that productive achievement and objective morality are requirements for freedom, allowing the individual to prioritize personal growth over state-mandated altruism. Sovereignty exists as a state of consciousness achieved through this systematic transformation. It renders the individual immune to fear-mongering and makes them effectively uncontrollable by external powers. Internal mastery must be expressed through external action. The sovereign individual does not merely observe the world, they move within it strategically. This requires physical resilience and martial discipline. A strong mind cannot operate effectively in a weak body. Physical mastery ensures you can protect your sovereignty when the war turns from psychological to physical. You must adopt the mindset of the man in the arena. This means embracing hardship as a tool for growth and taking absolute ownership of your reality regardless of the surrounding chaos. The warrior philosopher practices adaptive sovereignty, holding core values in stone while keeping operational methods in sand. This allows for constant course correction without compromising the overall mission. While sovereignty is an individual journey, the outcome is the formation of decentralized neo-tribes. These anti-fragile networks provide real belonging and security as the state's centralized architecture decays. Sovereign beings build the future while the present burns. They do not wait for permission from the institutions that are failing them. The armor of absolute sovereignty is the only weapon capable of dissolving the narrative illusion. When you master yourself, you reclaim your agency, and you win the war that no one else can see.